Welcome back to the Huddle.
Welcome back.
We're a thin crew tonight.
Yeah, we lost everybody, huh?
What week is it?
Man, this week it would be men's and women's.
All right.
Yes.
See, if I knew what week it was, everything would break down.
We'd be on something. We'd be on to something here.
Men's and women's tonight. I know the last time we had the men's class scheduled, Facebook gave us fits on all fronts that night.
Yep.
And so I know that there was some good teaching that didn't go out. I think it is still in circulation though. So I don't know if it'll be tonight or whatever, but I know there's good teaching there. So jump in your class.
Yeah, make sure you jump into class. Our classes are always profitable, always great knowledge, great wisdom shared. And
yeah.
So,
And I like the fact that, some weeks it may be particular to like a demographic that we're in, like men, women, marriage, whatever. But then you've got the other weeks that are like if you feel called to grow in your prayer life or, so always remember that there's more than one approach on these alternating weeks. So share the feed. Remind everybody about the class that pertains to them.
That's right.
So Pastor Randon.
Yes, sir.
How are you tonight? Are you dry, dripping, drowning?
Man, I am drip drying.
I love everybody always makes up categories. If they put the poll in the feed, you can't make up a category.
You can't make up a category. I would say drying. Definitely has been a lot of changes for me this year.
Yes, sir.
And then in the middle of the year, another change. So I think I've just had to kind of adjust.
Yeah.
Do a lot of adjusting. And that has been difficult in itself.
Yes.
And just kind of having to force myself to be more disciplined than I have in the past.
Yeah.
And that has been his challenge because it's easy to want to not do something, when you need to be doing something. So
that degree sounded real good at the beginning.
It did at the beginning, man. But it definitely has challenged me in a lot of ways. And I feel like in a lot of aspects of my life is forcing me to be more disciplined, even to be more intentional. More intentionality to make sure that I'm getting in my time with God first thing.
Sir.
Like if I don't, my day's gone and I get to the end of the day and I'm like, at that point I don't know how I'm gonna get it in.
Yeah.
So I think that has been the challenge of the most for me, but has been profitable. I mean, I think even just slowing down and being able to slow walk through the word, not feeling like I've had to read 10 chapters or 20 chapters.
Yes.
But really kind of deep diving and sitting with God and just allowing him to fill me up has definitely been profitable for me, making it through everything that I have on my plate right now.
You got to be flexible enough in your walk to accommodate those. That's why it's called a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. Like at the beginning of the year, we will often encourage everybody, like let's read the Bible through, and I think part of the benefit of that is just it gives you a metric of knowing whether or not you actually are in a regular habit of reading the Word.
Yep.
Because you and God, maybe nobody else knows for sure what's going on, but you and God know if/why or why not you are making progress on that. But if you hit a point where it's like, well, man, I have read the Bible wall to wall several times, and right now I'm actually kind of choking it down, and I'm not chewing the word. We got to have enough sensitivity to know, like we're not under the law. There has to be enough sensitivity to be able to say, you know what, he's asking me to slow down a little bit here and eat the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's necessary sometimes.
Yes.
It's a lot to take in, and even knowing that I can approach it, I've reading it, like you said, front to back 10 times. You could approach it and hear something new and
Yes,
get
sir.
something new, and so it's definitely. I love the way that it's always put is like, hey, we could. It's the Bible is easy enough for anyone to understand it, but it is deep enough that you could spend your entire life studying it
Yes.
and never discover the deep wells in it.
You won't get
not
you.
all of
You
it.
just won't mine every
Yeah,
ore vein of ore. You just won't.
yeah, yeah.
Last night I was looking at a kind of a shocking picture on social media of they unearthed a number of, well, I say a number. It was a mass grave. It wasn't just a number of bones. It was a mass grave. It was a long trench, and the bodies were just lined up, one after the other. And it was dated to, I believe, maybe 43 BC, something like that,
Oh, man.
way back.
Way back.
And it was from a battle between the Carthaginians and the. It was basically sounded like ancestral Sicilians. I can't remember the word, but it was in the Mediterranean. I think connected to Italy, and the people that unearthed it knew when it was from, and I kind of fell down a little bit of a rabbit hole with some of those,
Yeah.
pictures. I mean, that's pretty stark to see
Right.
something like from a moment in history, and there it is, right there in front of you. But I went right past it, and there was a picture that had been unearthed in England of. And what blew me away about this was it was from. No, that one must have been from a couple hundred BC because this one was from 43 AD, which stunned me because I'm thinking, now this is a picture of the Roman Empire
Yep.
while the apostles are alive. And this was a spiked fence post with like all these spikes sticking out of it, and it turned out to be, there was a technology that Julius Caesar had written about that they were using that basically it was like the earliest form of barbed wire, where he said we take the wooden posts of a fence and we put daggers sticking out of them, basically,
Right.
make it impossible to climb or close to impossible to climb. And we'd known that he referenced the technology, but we had never seen it before. And they unearthed it, which of course did a couple of things. One is it puts a picture on something that we only had a verbal description of before.
Right.
But also it tells you, well, why was this here? Like they had known that they knew certain things about the Roman activities in that area, but they didn't know what would have been going on that would have caused them to want to protect something that drastically. So they start digging around and they realize, oh, the Romans had a silver mine here. And so this clearly must have been
What they buried
protecting
it with.
the mine. So then they start looking around at, well, let's look at what they're digging. Let's look at what they did, what they got, where they went. And at a point, it became clear to them that they had mined a certain amount of silver. They'd been successful to an extent, but you could see where they had dug a really, really long mine shaft and not gotten to anything. And so it was clear that they had closed up shop.
Yeah.
And barely a meter past that, the geologists that were studying this, barely a meter past that, they found one of the largest silver reserves that's ever been found in that area of the world.
Wow.
And I've heard a similar
Yeah.
illustration used in preaching from history, from the gold rush, but it really, it hit me. I mean, you're looking at historic evidence from the time of Christ and the apostles of, one of the greatest empires that ever existed, and that human frailty of digging, and then just wearing out and giving up.
Man.
And I would have to say I'm dripping too. I keep getting pretty close to dry and then falling off into the water. And so I think that's just life, bro.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the moral of the story to me was, don't become so frantic in your efforts at trying to tunnel through and find the jackpot that you forget the art of just gently digging away, doggedly.
Yep.
One thing I know is I'm not going to quit. I
Right.
know there is a payload here, but really this isn't about the payload. The moment it becomes about the payload, it's much easier to give up and go elsewhere, because it would be easier to find the payload elsewhere. But if we understand that the growth is in the just steady digging, we won't give up before we won't do what it says. Don't grow weary in well doing.
Yeah.
In due season you will reap if you faint not. We don't want somebody to uncover the evidence of our lives in 20 centuries and know, man,
They're close.
they just picked it back up after lunch.
Man. Yeah. And how, you kind of mentioned, now a couple Sundays ago, the reality that we had kind of approached a point
Yeah.
as a body, and we were close
Yes,
to
sir.
reaching that next, I would say, level that God would want
Yes,
us
sir.
to attain to as a body. And the necessity of, reaching that together, but the awareness that it took to be sensitive
Yes, sir.
to God's pulling towards that, right? It's kind of the concept of, what we're talking about, him being holy. His holiness is drawing. It pulls you in. It's attractive, right? But at the same time,
Yeah.
there's a danger, because you really do have to die. You have to let go of all self to really be in his presence and to really be in another level with him.
Yes, sir.
You can't take all, even the concept of taking your old self with you.
Right.
You have to let that die. You have to
Gotta
leave
let it
that
die.
behind. And how difficult that can be, because we are too willing to hold on to our worldly things.
Yes, sir.
And I don't mean possessions in that, but our worldly things in our pride, our honor, our offense, our, ability to be, not okay with what's going on right now, which is interesting to me, because I was asked a question of, like, innately in us, why is it that every person, every human being of mankind has this inclination to believe that we deserve or need a better world,
Right.
right? Like, that's in everybody.
Right.
And
Man.
if you can consider it to be something wrong or something bad, then you have to believe that God created
Wow.
it good, right? So if we can't, we're having a problem with reconciling that. Whole nother rabbit hole
That's a
there.
good one,
But
though.
man, just made me think about kind of what kind of progressed that Sunday.
To that, I was reading in First Peter, and I was looking at it in the Amplified, just because it just kind of, it's a little bit wordy, and so it just kind of helped me a little bit. But to that point about understanding that in his holiness, in his separation and his uniqueness and his unlikeness to us, he has set up an objective standard of what good and right are. And in our soul, even when we don't want to acknowledge it, we know it.
Right.
And we're driven to seek it.
Yep.
Or either that or try to bury the
Try to fill it with other stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in 1 Peter 1, a couple verses back toward the beginning, verse 6, in this you rejoice greatly, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials. Verse 7, the purpose to those trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, which is much more precious than gold which is perishable, even though tested and purified by fire. So he's saying even gold, even what do you call it? Purified gold, even that isn't as valuable as the genuineness of your faith.
Right.
But that also has to be tested by fire to become as valuable as it is, so the genuineness of your faith may be found to result in your praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. So Peter's saying here, if I'm reading it right, that we can find joy in trials and troubles and opposition in life, because we know that, man, if it takes fire to refine gold, then these fiery trials are going to wind up resulting, they're going to come out in our praise.
Right.
They're going to come out in the way we worship. And they're going to elevate. We were created to give him the highest praise, right? And they are going to elevate our ability to do that, because we're going to be made more like him, more pure. Right. Though you have not seen him, verse 8, you love him. And though you do not even see him now, you believe and trust in him.
That's right.
And you greatly rejoice and delight with inexpressible and glorious joy, receiving as the result, the outcome, the consummation of your faith, the salvation of your souls.
Man.
I'm going to drop down here and read on in verse 13, but Pastor, I think we don't talk enough about the end of our faith, which is the salvation of our souls. The objective of our faith, yes, the end of our faith, but also the actual end result of staying faithful.
Right.
Is to be saved from out of all of the fallenness that we exist in right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The dry, dripping, drowning we won't have to ask each other that in eternity.
Right.
We won't have to ask each other that in the millennial kingdom.
No, we won't.
So, verse 13, prepare your minds for action. Be completely sober in spirit, steadfast, self-disciplined, spiritually and morally alert. Fix your hope completely on the grace of God that is coming to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. My hope has to be untouchably anchored in the hope of the coming of the King. I can't let it get too tied up with lower objectives, because I will, then hope will disappoint.
Right.
Even though it can be a little hard to, Jesus endured the cross, scorning its shame for the joy set before him. It can be a little hard to delay gratification like that. It's important that we learn to fix our hope on something that isn't subject.
Because it can change if it's subject. If it's subjective.
People say, how is it that hope, the Bible says hope doesn't disappoint? How can that be true? We all know hope does disappoint. Yeah, some hope does disappoint. If your hope disappoints, you're hoping in the wrong thing. That's where we need to learn. I can desire something,
right,
but if my hope is fixed to it and it disappoints, then my hope wasn't fixed where it won't disappoint.
That's all that yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. We got
Live as obedient children of God.
yeah.
Do not be conformed to the evil desires which governed you in your ignorance before you knew the requirements and transforming power of the good news regarding salvation. Man, number one, just like, can we just pause there and acknowledge, like, what's cute on an infant is not cute on a grown up?
Come on.
And like, right? Like,
Come on. Yeah.
my kid is not sinning because my kid is selfish.
Right.
Until my kid is sinning because my kid is selfish.
Come on. There's a difference.
There's a difference. I mean, there's a time in their life when it's entirely appropriate for them to expect that I will feed them, wipe their behind, clothe them, put their needs first, come running when they cry. But then as they begin to mature, we begin to, I'll just look at my kids sometime and it shocks them because they're so used to us being the solution for everything.
Right.
But, sometimes they'll, like, a big one that'll happen is, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. You know where the food is?
Right.
Like, I bought it. I cooked it. You know where it is. You could go get it. Right? But that's just that maturing process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And he said that it was, don't be conformed to the evil desires that governed us in our ignorance before we knew the requirements.
Before we knew it.
What did James say to him that knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it? To him, it's sin. So we're talking about growing up into our identity as children of God, as sons of God, not as children as in children, but as in children as in heirs.
Right.
We're talking about maturity here. But like the Holy One who called you, be holy yourselves in all your conduct. Be set apart from the world by your godly character and moral courage, because it is written, you shall be holy, set apart, for I am holy. If you address as Father the one who impartially judges according to each one's work. Okay, so he just said, the one you call Father is an impartial judge.
Right.
So when you come into his courtroom, he may be your father, but he's still the judge.
He's still the judge.
If you address as Father the one who impartially judges according to each one's work, conduct yourselves in reverent fear of him and with profound respect for him throughout the time of your stay on earth. For you know that you were not redeemed from your useless and spiritually unproductive way of life, inherited by tradition from your forefathers with perishable things like silver and gold, but you were actually purchased with precious blood, like that of a sacrificial lamb, unblemished and spotless, the priceless blood of Christ.
Wow.
So we're supposed to think different because we belong to a different house, a different family.
We do. And I think, one aspect of it is, I think sometimes we think of God, when we think of holiness, like God didn't become holy because he wanted to be separate from us. He was holy before he even began creating.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so his holiness is that separate. It is that, like you said, it's the righteous judge, that there was a due price for sin, right? But then there was a perfect sacrifice for sin.
Yes, sir.
So there was a perfect payment that only a perfect separate God could give.
Amen.
For due justice for what we did.
Yes.
We as in mankind.
Yes.
Right? And introduction of sin, right?
Yeah.
Separation from God.
Yeah.
Right? Think, like I said, the order that he established, the undoing of that order, the flipping of that order. You think about the sin that is in the world today. It's not just, we think a lot of it is on the simple basis of we sinned and we did something wrong and my sin is not as bad as that person's sin and we judge that person's sin greater than this person's sin. But if you truly look at the sin of the world, as mankind, it was introduced to us in the garden.
Yes, sir.
And it has completely affected every aspect of our life.
Yes, sir.
It's been rebellion.
Yes, sir.
It's been invasive. It's been, how else can you put it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the awareness of that part of it, of man, like righteous judge, perfect sacrifice.
Yeah.
In his perfections, there we were drawn to him because of his perfections, his perfect attributes.
Yeah.
His mercy, his grace, his love. They're perfect. We can't even establish how they meet to our standard. We don't even have a glimpse of that. But also dangerous and fearful because of the perfection
Right.
that is
The standard
required
is so high.
in his mercy, in his grace, in his peace, in his love. It's always on his terms, never on ours. And that's been the story of mankind.
Yeah.
We've always tried to make it on our terms, but it's been on God's terms
Yep.
since creation.
Conduct yourselves in reverent fear of him and with profound respect for him throughout the time of your stay on the earth. I think in a healthy father-child relationship, fear is a factor. Sometimes I see it in my kids, and it's always sobering because I want to make sure that the fear isn't predicated on me not being a safe place for them,
Right.
but rather on them understanding that I'm not a safe person. So there's a fine
It's fine.
line.
Yep.
Because what makes the presence of your father comforting in your home is knowing that he's not safe. It's good to know that you're safe. You're safe with him,
That's so good.
but he's not safe.
Yep.
If he was safe, you wouldn't feel so good
Right.
being in his home.
That's true. Whew.
I don't remember who it was that was interviewing Jordan Peterson. Hate to throw that name out there. That just right at the end, just that little. But they asked him, how can you say that? I forget exactly what the question was. It's a viral clip. Basically, how can you say that that you're supposed to be, that men are supposed to be good and righteous, but you also say that they're not supposed to be safe? Aren't you basically indicating that there should be violence? And Peterson said, if I am incapable of great violence, where is the moral good in my discipline not to use it? He said, if I'm not capable of it,
Right.
there's no moral value in me not doing it. There's no moral value in me not flying to the moon because I can't.
You can. Yeah.
But he said, if I am vested with a level of danger and then I master that, then the people around me know they're with somebody that's good.
That's right.
And that's our Father, bro.
That's our Father. Man.
Aslan the lion saying,
Oof.
oh, I'm dangerous,
Yeah.
but you're safe.
That's right. That's right.
Stick with me.
Man, that's good. So good.
This is what, bro, this is what I heard in the word that God gave you for us on Sunday. It's just, we just need to remember who he is. We're very comfortable with being his children. TikTok, Christianity, there's a lot of this daddy God stuff going around. Okay. All right. It just, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying know who he is.
Know who he is.